Alright, today's video will be in the spiritual warfare, and it will be titled the shield wall. And I will be using two examples of a shield wall and two different warriors and two different mindsets. The first one I will focus on will be one of the more famous ones, and that is the Roman army and their shield wall. Now there's names for it. There's phalanx, and there's different names for it, but basically their shields were designed with pieces of metal, almost like hinges or pieces for hinges on edges of the shield. And these are some. Now, there's tons of shields, and they used all sorts of different ones, but they would lock them to the shield next to them, to their brothers, the brother's shield, the brothers in arms. And they would advance together. And what that did was it made a wall, which I had my other fist free, I could show you, but it would push them together and make them solid. It would make them a solid unit, and they wouldn't be easily broken. And the Romans used a lot. And then there's another example, which I'm going to include. They're not the other example, but there were Spartans that made it famous, the shield wall, when they were at Thermopylae Pass. The Spartans made that found formation they used, where it was shield upon shield, and their brothers had the brother next to them, and they held off so many million Persian for 3 days. Now, the other shield wall that I have said at the beginning of the example, there's two, is the Viking shield wall. Now, as some may think, yes, the Vikings were similar to barbarians and barbaric as they said. Okay, I don't really think they were. I think they were somewhat smart, because you don't just go into battle being, dumb. Like, you have some strategy, and their shield wall wasn't as refined. They would have their shields, and they would stand side by side, but most of the time you would have berserk warriors that were specifically berserkers, and they were called shield breakers. And they would send these warriors forward that would be hyped up on mushrooms or all sorts of weird chemicals that they were on, some kind of weird plants that made them hallucinate, and they were basically animals, and they would go right into the enemy ranks and would have no fear of, death or even being hurt, because that's the way they were. There's a blue jay ahead of me. See him? He's jumping on the dirt right there. Anyways, as I was saying, they would go in completely berserk, and they didn't care about injuries. They could have injuries inflicted on them, and a lot of them didn't die, right? Because the drugs in their system kept them going so much that they could take grievous injuries and would still stand up. It was a berserk rage. And some Vikings fought like that, and then they did have a shield wall, but theirs didn't lock together, and theirs was easy to break, because Vikings, although they worked with each other, they were basically solitary fighters. They believed in death, so they really weren't thinking about, defense, because they would go fight with, Odin, their false god, and go to Valhalla is what they believed. And you couldn't go that way unless you didn't die in battle, so they really didn't have shields too much or rely on them. That's why, and some people, some Christians I'm going to use, is they're like the berserkers. They'll have God's word drawn as a sword, and they have no self-control, they have no discipline, and they just start flailing it around and slashing whoever gets in their way, or whatever gets in their way, and they don't think about the damage they do. They just start flailing around. And Some Christians are like that. They'll use God's word and they will shred and slice and tear people to pieces. And they will wound the kingdom more than help it. Then there's the other one. That is the Roman soldier we'll go with here. But the Christian there is the disciplined one. One that has control. That has the experience, that knows when to draw their sword, and they know when to use it. They have temperance. They're reserved. When they draw their weapon, it's to use it, and it's not to inflict harm on other people. It's to protect or defend the kingdom or their family. And there's a restraint in them. And then, as I said, the other example you have is the berserk barbarian that just goes in and just flails around and doesn't care. And just inflicts damage on anything. So, the shield wall was tactical brilliance. If you could have one and you had and it was about trust. You see, you couldn't just go into a shield wall and just rely on it. You had to trust that the brother next to you would hold the line. As I said in the previous video, hold the line, which I uploaded. You have to rely on the other person in that shield wall. Is that person going to lock their shield with yours? Are they going to stand their ground with you? Or are they going to be the weak link that ends up faltering and the whole shield will fail? See, that is the one downside to the shield wall. If even one is weak or doesn't have their shield in the right position, it crumbles. The wall falls apart and you end up, being defeated. And if everybody's not for the kingdom and not on the same page, then division's going to happen and the enemy's just going to tear you to pieces. But when there's unity and your shields are linked and you have trust in your brothers, then you can, and this is for the ladies if they're watching this, because you've probably stuck here. If you have, I'm going to also point out is shield maidens, they were called. And they were female Viking warriors. Yes, the Vikings took females to battle with them. And they were sometimes every bit or even fiercer than the men. And they went to battle. They would fight, and there's a few of them that you can read in history about, some female warriors, not too many, but yeah, a little knowledge that people didn't know is that the Vikings would take their female, they were called shield maidens, and they would take them in the battle with them. So if you're born again, here's your watching this, and you're a lady, guess what? You can be a shield maiden. You can have your friends link shields with you, and you can be shield maidens. And you can have your own shield wall. And as brothers, you have to surround yourself with strong people. People that are willing to pick you up. People that are going to lock shields with you and are going to stand with you no matter what the world hurls at you. Because you can be strong and have a big shield, right? And it can be a strong shield. You can be strong, you can be planted. But if you don't have anybody to watch your back or cover your sides, you're vulnerable. You can only stop a frontal attack. You can't stop the hits from the side. You can't stop somebody from getting you in the back. So you have to have people around you. You have to be hemmed in. And God hems us in with his angels and his word. But he also puts people in our lives to support us. So, find your place in the shield wall. Hold the line and hold the ground. Link shields with your brothers and form the wall. This has been a voice in the wilderness, a soldier, bond servant of Christ, signing off. Whenever you see this, have a blessed day or night. Stay safe in these dark and crazy times, and I will see you in the next one.